Spoiler warning for Islands of Insight, first proposed in 2024, found to be habit-forming.
Islands of Insight is a fantastic puzzle game nestled inside an okay puzzle game. But if you like puzzles, and specifically logic puzzles, you're going to get your money's worth and then some. To compare, I bought Helldivers 2 and Islands of Insight on the same day. I have 70 minutes in Helldivers and 40 hours in Islands, which says more about me than either game. Nerd! Islands of Insight is being sold as an online multiplayer persistent world puzzle game, which is technically correct. But if you're thinking an open world Portal or Swapper or Talos, this isn't it. Puzzles are not organically built into the world, and there is no central mechanic which is carried from island to island. Instead, players of IOI, I will refer to the game as such from here on out, are dropped in Puzzle Land. See this screen? These are all the puzzles I can see from here. Now that's a lot of puzzles, and I too was excited at the prospect, but not all puzzles are created equal, except that some of them are created equal, which is a problem. So let's go over the 20-something puzzle types available, and we're gonna hurry through this because I don't really care to talk long about them. Tier 1 is the not puzzles. These are the ones that just aren't puzzles, not by any definition I understand. Hidden objects is the first offender. These are translucent objects hidden all over the world. And I do mean all over. Gates and rings are resolved just by walking into them, while cubes have to be clicked on. They are so commonly found that they become a nuisance. There is no solving these. Most times you won't even know they're nearby until you suddenly get credit for them. Glide rings and flow orbs are basically two sides of the same coin. Flow orbs are, well, orbs littered around the ground. To solve them, you try to touch each one as fast as possible. There's not a lot of thinking involved. Glide rings are just the wing cap sections from Mario 64. The worst offenders are the music and memory grids. One is visual, one is audio, same process for both. Review the material, pick a square, review again, pick a square, review again, pick a square. These are the only two puzzle types I actively avoid. Next up are what I like to call the puzzle adjacent. Most of these are fun, and I take a bit of pride in solving them. They require some thought, but, well, let's get into them. So, armillary rings are a set of rings floating in the air. Most are gold, one or two will be blue. Your goal is to find a vantage point where you can see through all the gold rings but none of the blues. And it's satisfying to find that spot, especially on the tricky moving rings. But they're also easy. I once solved some rings from across a field just by spamming clicks on it. Skydrops are beautiful, and they're a set of floating orbs. This game has a thing with orbs. From the right vantage point, these orbs of differing sizes and locations can be made through forced perspective to form a ring. The trick is to find the smallest orb and start looking from there. The challenge comes from figuring out which orbs belong to which set. Leitmotifs appear as a set of unrelated marks on the ground, walls, pillars, etc., but when seen from the right vantage point form a complete image which can then be solved. Sentinel stones are a bit different. Surrounded by pillars, you have to find the vantage point from which you have line of sight on the center of each pillar with none being blocked. Matchboxes involve finding pairs of boxes, one red and one green, with the same symbol. Then finding a vantage point from which you can see both of them. So yes, the keen listener will have noticed that each of these first 5 puzzle types involves the same mechanic, finding the right spot to view from. They each have a different quirk, and difficulty ranges significantly. Matchboxes are a whole lot harder to solve than skydrops, but at the end of the day, they all have the same solution. Moving on. Wandering Echoes are a game of chase. I consider them puzzle adjacent because your gravity-bound body cannot so easily chase a floating firefly without a little bit of problem solving. Shy auras must be approached in a certain way according to certain rules that change from aura to aura. But it will always be one of 5 rules, and most of the time it's creep up on it slowly. Hidden pentads are otherwise known as Easter egg hunts. Spawn 5 orbs in a bordered area and then go find them. It's fun, except when it's tedious. Morphic fractals can go straight to hell. Crystal labyrinths are mazes, and I have them on this list because I still don't know if I consider mazes to be puzzles or not. In some ways they require thought and planning, but then so does getting myself from here to Cleveland, and the stakes are higher in Ohio. Which brings us finally to the actual I'm sure this time puzzles, of which there are 5. Which sounds a lot worse than it is, so I'm begging you, please don't take this as a reason to dismiss IOI. Look at the playtime again. I said this was 2 games in 1. This is the mediocre game. We will get to the good one soon, but I need context and a couple more minutes on this video's runtime. Okay, match 3. You already know how this game works. This is Candy Crush without the predatory monetization. And to my surprise, the match 3 formula can create some pretty cool puzzles. There is actual strategy to learn, patterns to figure out. You can solve these instead of just having more fall endlessly. Relies on a lot of trial and error though. Rolling Block feels like something I've played before, but despite racking my brain, I can't figure it out. It comes in 2 flavors, roll the block to the right spot, and roll the block over every spot. Some puzzles combine the 2. Decently fun and satisfying to solve. Shifting Mosaic. These are sliding tile puzzles. There isn't really much else to be said, but the unique shapes and goal add enough flavor to keep them interesting. Phasic Dial. This is another one I swear I've played before. Clicking buttons rotates dials, each button has different values. You solve it when all dials are pointed at the center. Sightseers were originally puzzle adjacent, being another puzzle about finding a vantage point, but I feel they earn their way up by including elements of investigation, as you'll need to position yourself via landmarks. My only complaint is that the environments of Islands of Insight are dense and not that varied, so finding those landmarks can sometimes be frustrating. And that's it. The puzzles of Islands of Insight, littered everywhere, waiting for you to solve them through experimentation, pattern recognition, observation, or dumb luck. But they were all of them deceived, for another puzzle was created. If you're a frequent puzzle gamer, chances are you've come across little hidden rules. Circumstances which always seem to play out the same way. Familiarity garners an understanding of a puzzle's patterns and mechanics gleaned through so many aha moments. This understanding is called insight. Well, IOI has a page for that. The more you play a puzzle, the more insights you unlock. For example, in a match 3 puzzle, no matter how you create a match, no tile will ever move upwards. Certain buttons in Phasic Dial will be unable to solve the puzzle at all unless the dial's orientation is first changed. These unwritten, though now they're kind of written, rules are situational but inviolate, and knowing them will make you faster at solving. The most insighted puzzles are Match 3 and Phasic Dial, which each have 2. The least is Morphic Fractal with 0, which is what it deserves. Now, let me introduce you to the logic grids. This is the game within the game. This is the awesome game in the okay game. This is what I've spent 40 hours of my life doing. Logic grids share the most similarity with Sudoku. They require no guesswork or experimentation, though you might find either one helpful. Each logic grid comes with a starting configuration and a set of rules to follow. From there, you're tasked with filling the whole board with white and black squares without violating any rules. It is a fiercely orderly process that suffers no fools and rewards consideration. Some of them are very easy. Actually, logic grids have difficulty ranks, and are the only puzzles that do. Base difficulty goes from 1 to 5. I'm comfortable around 3 or 4. But there are also extra difficult ones marked by spiky pips floating above them. What determines the difficulty is how many squares are in your starting set and how many rules you have. More is always better. A larger starting set obviously means less to fill in, but the larger rule set being beneficial is maybe a bit paradoxical. See, solving a logic grid is less about figuring out where a square should go than where it cannot go. The more rules you have to follow, the faster that process of elimination goes. The hardest puzzles have large boards, yes, but they also have very few rules. What seems like a restriction is actually a guideline you can leverage to your advantage. For example, a lotus tile is its own axis of symmetry, so if one side of a white tile is connected to a black tile, then the corresponding side cannot be white, as that would ruin the symmetry. A viewpoint indicates how many same color tiles are connected along the cardinal directions. If a viewpoint 3 can already see 3, then no other tiles can be connected on those lines. It's less complex than I'm making it sound, and it acclimates you to the process with easy early puzzles. In fact, several mechanics have chains or webs which are like tutorial levels guiding you to competency. I've already gone for a page and a half about logic grids, and there are 4 pages left. The other puzzles only got a paragraph. But this isn't about how I favor logic grids, this is about how IOI does. This is about how logic grids are a game within a game. So let's see IOI's evidence. Remember the insights, how each puzzle except fractals has at least 1 but they max out at 2? How many do you think logic grids have? 3, 5, 10, 20? Try 52! And that's assuming this one insight here is actually an unfound match 3 and not part of the massive collective that is Logic Grid Insights. I'm not the developer, so I don't really know what the process here was, but I have to wonder why the other puzzles are here at all given the disparity. I kind of wish the island was solely littered with logic grids. It would lose some of its allure, sure, but think of how much more they could do with those resources. And if you're wondering, wouldn't that get old, an endless island of logic grids? Eventually, sure, but whereas Match 3 and rolling block puzzles are all basically the same, the unique rules for logic grids create some astounding diversity. There are 13 rules that I have found, but I haven't explored the whole island and I'm sure there are more. The verbs remain the same, select a white or black square, but the approach changes depending on the rules in effect. So here's my favorites. All connected. Squares of the indicated color have to connect with one another. This is a gift. If a square is blocked on 3 sides, you know for certain the 4th square will be the same color. Taken to extremes, you can fill out half a board with this rule. Pattern band. Never make the indicated shape with the indicated color. Like all connected, this can get you some free squares. If putting down a black square would make the band shape, then it has to be white. Off by 1. This is a mutation of numbers, where a numbered area must equal the number on... This is simple in practice, but weirdly hard to verbalize. In Off by 1, the area must be 1 more or less than its indicated number, leading to some creative thinking when you realize a 2 and a 4 could both be 3. Search the environment. This one breaks out of the grid and sends you exploring. Find something that suspiciously resembles a logic grid, then use its clues to solve the puzzle. Underclued. This is the king of them all. You cannot solve an underclued puzzle. Instead, you use the rules to determine which squares you absolutely know for sure and leave the rest blank. This one is magnificent because an expert in underclued is an expert at everything. They are entirely about testing your insight in the most direct and uncompromising way possible. What we have in logic grids is an incredibly versatile tool which is so expansive it eclipses everything else in IOI and claims the whole damn game for itself. Every other puzzle in this game is an appetizer, and logic puzzles are the prime rib. Or maple glazed Brussels sprouts if you're a vegetarian. But they were all of them deceived for another... Okay. So remember my disdain for the memory and music cubes? I dislike them because they require no logic or puzzle solving and don't really even need memory. And since they all take the shape of a logic grid, seeing one from a distance gets me hyped only to let me down. But there is another which, to my mind, should be counted among the logic grids, but for some reason isn't. A pattern grid presents you with an incomplete picture on a grid and charges you with finishing it. That is the only rule you are given. Nothing will ever be marked wrong, and you won't know if you're right until you lay down the last tile. But if they were counted among the logic grids, they might be my favorite. Pattern grids follow rules, but those rules have no consistency. One pattern might be a repeating set of images. Another might be an amplification of a design. Another might have nothing to do with the image at all and require you to think about what you're seeing in a way that I might have had to look up on Reddit to understand. To sum it up, a pattern grid is a logic grid where the rules are the solution. And that feels like a culmination of everything we've done so far. I don't get this excited about Sudoku, I'll tell you that much. Now, if you pick up IOI, you won't be able to exclusively do logic grids. They are the bulk of the content, but the game's open world structure requires certain conditions to be met. Quests reward blocks called Mirabilis, which unlock new areas. Some of them will require you to complete other kinds of puzzles. But there is a reward for this, which is the revelation of another puzzle was created. And this is the one thing IOI was missing. After solving the puzzle at the Temple of Enlightenment, don't worry about the story, just smile and nod, a new type of puzzle called Mysteries is unlocked. They are comparatively few in number, but that's understandable. Each one is a set of clues leading you to a specific puzzle, most often a previous logic grid which you will be tasked to solve with an alteration to the rules. These are the endgame, so I'm only going to spoil one of them. Where lands collide, a great stone gate tilts amid the rubble. Light shines through the fallen gate, illuminating a narrow path that climbs upward. Solve the smallest of the 3 siblings, adding 2 to each number. Where's the 3 sibling? Oh, I see. I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you meant by narrow path. When you solve the alternate grid, you get a golden success screen, and you're one step closer to unlocking the pyramid from the start of the game, which I haven't actually done yet. Look, this video had to come out at some point, and I'm already 40 hours invested, so I don't know what's inside it. I also don't know what the Echoes of Time are since I haven't earned one yet. They could be something else entirely. But these mysteries and the way they further permutate the logic grid formula cement the idea that this is a logic game with 20-something diversionary puzzles surrounding it. And if more evidence is needed, the apex of the pyramid, the final challenge of the game, is a quartet of uber-hard logic grids. I rest my case. And so I really do have to wonder why the game was structured this way. If you enjoy logic puzzles, this is totally the game for you. It's amazing, it's fun, even the open world aspect contributes. Wandering through a ruin and finding a nest of grids with a theme and a catchy name never ceases to be exciting. But would I have gotten that far if that's what it had been billed as? IOI's multiplayer is very limited. Nothing is co-op, there is no general chat, it's more like parallel play than genuine multiplayer. But to look at the ads, you would think this was World of Puzzlecraft. And that idea, a world by puzzle lovers for puzzle lovers, chocked full of puzzles of all kinds, was what drew me in. So despite having loved what's here, I can't help feeling a shade annoyed that it wasn't what it promised. But that isn't a mistake I suffer for. If anything, it's only gonna bite Lunark in the ass. I'm still having a great time with the game they made. The game within the game. And I don't know when or how I'm going to stop. Got any good logic game suggestions? Please put them in the comments or project them into the sky over New England. I'll see it. Thanks for playing, everyone. I'm sorry, it's not you. I think this relationship has finally run its course.